In this particular case, the Republicans were right.
So you think the Republicans are sort of an extreme fringe party?
No, I don't think that they're an extreme fringe party. I think that they're operating against those they believe are extreme on the left. Like, for example, when you talk about the LGBTQ community, I'm a fiscal conservative and I'm a social liberal. I'm fiscal with my dollars. I ain't apologizing for not wanting to pay high taxes to anybody. I'm not apologizing for that, right? But outside of that, I'm pretty liberal. Live and let live, okay?
Stephen A. Smith lit up The View and went straight at Sunny Hostin, calling her out for defending the same brand of wokeness that helped sink the dink in last year's election. He made it clear the party's hard push toward extreme policies played a major role in its collapse. But Sunny kept brushing that reality aside, acting like none of it mattered, and insisting the loss had nothing to do with the ideas voters clearly rejected. She argued that wokeness wasn't the real issue at all. Smith wasn't buying it. What followed was a direct dismantling of her argument, as he laid out how the party's obsession with wokeness helped turn Kamala Harris's campaign into a political disaster.
I'm pretty liberal. Live and let live, okay? But you had folks on the left that were introducing some things when we got in the whole transgender issue, and they were talking about bathrooms, or they were talking about males transitioning to females and competing against girls in sports and stuff like that. These
That's
are
less than 1% of the population.
I understand that,
but you know what? Add Eric
ridiculous.
in the NFL.
But see, but I think that's where the mistake is made.
Yeah,
you're saying it's ridiculous. I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
But most of the voters out there don't think like that.
But
that
means they don't have the information.
Okay, but 90% of the voters don't have the information.
What's shocking is how many people still pretend they don't understand why Kamala Harris and the Dinks lost. The reason was simple: an all-consuming obsession with wokeness. Across the country, parents raised serious concerns and were brushed off as if they didn't matter. Mothers and fathers pushed back against policies they felt crossed clear lines. Yet Democrats treated those concerns like ignorance instead of listening. Families also objected to unfair situations in school sports, where obvious physical differences created real disadvantages. These weren't fringe opinions. They were common frustrations in households nationwide. Instead of reconsidering, the DNSC doubled down and labeled critics as intolerant. That arrogance didn't just alienate voters, it backfired. Americans don't want ideology forced into schools, sports, and family life. They want fairness, common sense, and leaders grounded in reality, not endless social experiments disguised as progress.
If you out there busting your tail to make ends meet and to pay your bills, and you're going to work every day, and you got a family to take care of, and you're in New York City, you're getting stuck 2 hours of your day, you're stuck in traffic, you understand, you got a whole bunch of stuff to go through. You don't have time to know what you and I know.
Maybe you need to listen to the news when you're in traffic.
Well, again, I agree with
not
that.
be uninformed.
Or you listen to stuff that's going to take you away from the things that brings down your spirit. And that's unfortunately what most voters are doing.
Most Americans don't have the time or energy to dissect every political theory or policy debate. They're busy working long hours, raising families, paying bills, and trying to stay afloat. They're not reading policy papers or watching experts argue over ideas that feel disconnected from real life. So when something sounds unreasonable or out of touch, they vote against it. And honestly, who can blame them? For everyday Americans, wokeness and identity politics have never been priorities. Survival, stability, and financial security are. People worry about grocery prices, rent, healthcare, and gas. They care about steady jobs and safe communities, not lectures about pronouns or abstract ideologies pushed into classrooms. In the end, economics, not ideology, drives elections. Common sense rooted in real life will always beat woke politics.
Because you were inserted, even though you were the vice president and it was the Biden-Harris administration, you had folks who are independent. I'm not talking about those on the right, and I'm not talking about those on the left, just independents, who said, wait a minute, she didn't experience a primary either. And the last time we saw her in a primary was 4 years ago, and she didn't even make it to Iowa. They used that as an excuse to point to her level of inexperience. Then you got the war in Russia and Ukraine, you got the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, Hamas and Hezbollah and all of that stuff, and you had Trump using codes. Look, do you want her? Where is she? Where's the interviews? Where's she showing herself? Where's the tough questions? Where's the interrogation? And he leaned on certain things.
Stephen A. Smith didn't just criticize Kamala Harris, he dismantled what remained of her political credibility with sharp, unapologetic clarity. Harris never had genuine popularity, not even as vice president. From the beginning, she felt imposed on voters rather than chosen by them. That frustration only grew as her politics drifted further into full-blown wokeness. Smith pointed out how that shift steadily pushed everyday Americans away. People were exhausted by political dogma replacing real solutions. And it didn't stop at policy. He also called Harris out for avoiding tough interviews, the kind that test whether a leader has confidence, strength, and command. By dodging scrutiny, she only fueled doubts about her readiness. Smith's takedown made the outcome clear. Voters didn't reject her by accident. They saw a candidate who was out of touch, untested, and undone by her own arrogance.
So everybody remember he originally said he was just going to do it for 4
That's
years.
right. That's what I brought up.
Right. And did you think that once you know who stepped in, he said, well, there's nobody, we don't have anybody.
Well, the point is that
That's right.
it's not about who you're going up against when you know you're not what you used to be. And see, this is where covering sports puts me at a distinct advantage. I cover people every day where it's time for you to go, but you're holding on and you don't want to leave. People who cover the world of sports are accustomed to seeing that all the time. You are the left, you leaned, and you were a prisoner to the extreme left in a lot of people's eyes. Well, guess what? Most of America doesn't operate on the fringes. Whether you're left or you're right, you're relatively centrist.
Stephen A. Smith summed it up perfectly. The Democratic Party became captive to its most extreme wing, the so-called woke activists who slowly dragged the party off balance. Instead of pushing back, mainstream Democrats stayed quiet. Even those in the so-called center refused to speak up. That silence said everything. To everyday Americans, it looked like total surrender to the extremes, embracing rhetoric and policies many voters found divisive or dangerous. By refusing to draw a line, Democrats allowed wokeness to define their entire brand. When the election loss came, the same voices who once defended it suddenly tried to deny ever supporting it. But by then, it was too late. Voters had already decided the party had abandoned common sense. As Smith pointed out, denial after defeat isn't strategy, it's proof of how disconnected they'd become.
The problem is those on the fringes continuously push for you to get everything you want.
Yeah.
They're not about getting things done. They're about getting their way. And if they're not going to get their way, they're about complaining and griping about it because they understand that when you are operating based off of grievance, that's usually what provokes you to get to the polls. And that is why they don't mind feeling aggrieved and displaying and disseminating that kind of message, because they know people are going to gravitate to that. And as a result, that might get them to the polls, you thinking you're going to get what you want as a result.
The woke left eventually tightened its grip on Kamala Harris, leaving her with a clear choice: submit to their ideology or risk political exile. She chose submission. That outcome wasn't surprising. The woke wing of the Democratic Party has a long history of getting its way through pressure, not persuasion. They don't debate, they demand compliance. Anyone who resists is quickly labeled intolerant, canceled, or threatened with professional ruin. Harris aligned herself with their agenda, believing loyalty would protect her career. Instead, it drove away millions of mainstream voters. She sank deeper into ideological rigidity, thinking it would save her. It didn't. Voters saw through the pandering and rejected it outright. In the end, she didn't just lose. She became another casualty of the very politics she embraced.
You think the Republicans are sort of an extreme fringe party?
No,
at
I
this
don't.
point?
I don't think that they're an extreme fringe party. I think that they're operating against those they believe are extreme on the left. Like, for example, when you talk about the LGBTQ community, I'm pretty liberal. Live and let live, okay?
Yeah.
But you had folks on the left that were introducing some things when we got in the whole transgender issue, and they were talking about bathrooms, or they were talking about males transitioning to females and competing against girls in sports and stuff like that.
Then Sunny Hostin jumped in with her usual routine and didn't disappoint. As expected, she twisted Stephen A. Smith's words into something he never said. Smith never claimed Republicans were a fringe movement. That was a distraction Sunny invented to avoid addressing his actual point. What Smith clearly argued was that the woke left had hijacked the Democratic Party, holding it hostage with radical policies that pushed middle America away. Democrats allowed themselves to be defined by extremes. Meanwhile, Republicans stepped into the vacuum, pushing back against ideological overreach. Smith wasn't praising Republicans as perfect, he was explaining why voters turned to them. Sunny's spin didn't weaken his argument, it proved it.
Howard Stern says that he wasn't confident that the country was ready to elect the first female president because he knows, quote, how men talk behind closed doors about us. So we're very privileged to have a great guy here today.
Yeah.
Tell her, what do men say about us behind closed doors?
First of all,
Say it to our faces.
Yeah, do tell.
I don't hide, so no worries there. Here's the deal. I respectfully disagree with Howard Stern, only from the standpoint that I wish he had been more specific. Why don't you say white men? Because let me tell you something about black men. We love our mamas.
I know that.
We love.
It's long past time for America to move beyond choosing leaders based on identity alone. Representation matters, but gender should never be the deciding factor for the presidency. The country faces serious challenges: economic instability, border security, healthcare failures, rising crime, and global competition. These problems won't be solved with symbolism or surface-level messaging. They require strong, capable leadership with a record of results. Leaders should be chosen for vision, competence, and the ability to make tough decisions, not for checking identity boxes. America will absolutely elect a female president when she earns that trust through merit and strength. The Democratic losses weren't about rejecting women or progress. They were about rejecting incompetence, political theater, and nonstop wokeness. Kamala Harris and Hillary Clinton didn't fail because they were women. They failed because they didn't inspire confidence or connect with everyday Americans. Stephen A. Smith was right. The woke left dragged the party into extremes, and Democrats paid the price at the ballot box. America is ready for a female president, but she must earn it through leadership, not symbolism. And that brings us to the end of today's video. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.